Have you ever had a win with God? A God win? And Deacon Amanda, the trouble with being in a win space with God is that the devil has a way of convincing you that while you're waiting, God has quit you. That while you're sitting, God has walked away. That God has forgotten what God said he was going to do. You've been praying and ain't no answer. God's not going to answer. You've been waiting and God hasn't moved. God's not going to move. You've been holding out and God hasn't delivered. God ain't going to deliver. The devil creeps in your mind to get you to think that somehow, some way, God has failed to do what God said he's going to do. And in that win season, when you're wondering when God's going to do what God said God was going to do, I want you to hang out with Mary right here in Bethlehem. Because what we see in Mary is that if you open your eyes and take a good look at what's happening in your life, you will see that there are some signs that God is up to something. Beloved, I don't know who I can appreciate. God has not forgotten about you. God has not abandoned you. You have not committed suicide on God's promises. God has not aborted your destiny. God is at work around you. And if you open your eyes, there are some signs to encourage you that God is not finished with you yet. God sends Gabriel to this virgin named Mary and tells her, Mary, you're about to have a baby. Before Gabriel finds his way to Bethlehem, he stops at Liz's house. Now, you need to know Elizabeth is the cousin of Mary. And two things you need to know about her. Number one, she's barren, she's old, and she is postmenopausal. I want you to see the problem here. She's barren, she's postmenopausal, and he's old. And the Lord shows up, opens up her womb, empowers her husband, and they conceive a child. Now, what you ought to be asking is, if she's been barren, and if she's now old, and he's old, why does the Lord show up now to give her a baby? God could have done this 30 years ago. She wanted a child years ago, and God waits till she's old with an old husband to grant her a baby. Why does God show up now? One answer: Mary. Because God's about to go to Mary and tell Mary something Mary ain't gonna believe. God's about to show up to Mary and say, Mary, guess what, girl? I'm about to impregnate you, and you've never even touched a man. And God knows Mary is going to have difficulty believing that God can do that. So when Mary questions how it can happen, God says, if you think that's tripped out, I need you to go see Elizabeth, your cousin, who is barren and old and now is pregnant, because I need you to know that with God, nothing is impossible. You want to know how you know God is up to something? When you see God at work in the lives of people around you. That God has a way, before God does something in you, God will find another brother or sister to work in their life, so that when you doubt what God can do, God will send you in the presence of somebody who's living testimony that God can do anything. But whatever your struggle is